Aloha, dear traders. Great to have you here today again. Another new week, 12th to 16th of May 2025. It's a beautiful trading week to behold, lots of opportunities to be had. As always, I'm Atomashi Daniel, Australia's global market analyst. So, we're going to be starting our fundamental analysis like usually, and some of the pairs we're going to be considering this week include the NZD USD, the Kiwi, the Aussie USD, the USD Swiss, and Bitcoin, the almighty Bitcoin. So today we have a somewhat technicals day, Monday, 12th of May. Not much significant data expected today, except the fact that the US and China have just recently agreed to some tariff deal, to some trade deal. I'm going to talk about that in a bit. But on Tuesday, we have uh, the CPI data, US CPI data expected across board. We expect that there's going to be some massive volatility on this day to counteract what has happened today on Monday, because today, Monday, huge volatility came from the US China agreeing to some sort of trade deal. Perhaps the CPI data may counter or perhaps maybe direct opposite of what's happening today, Monday. Why is that? So the US and China have agreed to a trade deal, good for China and good for the US. So good for the US dollar across board. And if you check the markets, the US dollar has been appreciating across board. However, tomorrow the CPI data might be poor. So this is quite nicely timed. I believe the US government have timed the release of this information at about this time because they expect that the CPI data tomorrow might weaken the US dollar, especially considering the US tariff wars with China and all other major countries. So be on the lookout for the CPI data tomorrow, the Australian wage price index on Wednesday, and the Australian employment change and unemployment rates on Thursday are expected to affect the Australian dollar USD. And then the US PPI data, retail sales data, unemployment claims, and Fed Chair Powell's speech. Okay, the Fed Chair Powell is due to speak at an event on Thursday. Expect some nice volatility because this might actually influence the markets different ways, depending on the data that's released. And then we have the New Zealand inflation expectations that might affect the NZD USD to be released on Friday. And finally, also the US prelim UM consumer sentiment and expectations. Okay, uh, could also influence the US dollar, thereby affecting all these pairs talked about, the NZD USD, the Aussie, and the USD Swiss. Okay, now all these pairs are being affected today by the US and China agreeing to some sort of trade deal where the US has agreed to suspend 24% duty rates on China's goods for about 90 days. And China also agreed to the same 90 days to lower tariffs to as low as 10% from 125% on US goods. That's great for the US dollar. Great for the US dollar. And then to put an icing on the cake, because of this trade war escalations and trade deal, we might get some massive volatility, especially from Bitcoin. So the trade deal or tariff war escalations, which in this case now we have a trade deal, will probably cause consumers to look for opportunities elsewhere, or rather traders to look for opportunities elsewhere, which might include gold, the safe havens, okay, and including Bitcoin. So trading in other asset classes such as Bitcoin might increase volatility in this pair. Okay, and also the trade deal for the US might also somewhat influence this pair a bit. Okay, the news does not seem to affect Bitcoin much, but maybe just a bit. Okay, however, expect some great volumes of volatility because of a swerve from all other risky assets due to the trade deals or comments coming from Donald Trump. Okay, expect a swerve into crypto, especially Bitcoin. Okay, which seems quite safer from the news. All right, so this is fundamental analysis. Now let's go into the charts without much ado. So we're starting with the Kiwi. The NZD USD has um, been moving nicely along an ascending channel. It broke past it and touched upon uh, uh, significant resistance level 6028 after surpassing the psychological level of 0.6005. Now, Where it is right now, if you check, it's at the 200-day moving average and the resistance border of the channel, okay, which coincides, that region coincides with the support region of July, August 2024 or July 2024. Here we have April also 2024, also coinciding with November 2023 and August, September 2023. So it's a significant region right now, and you can see that the 200-day moving average is right there. Hence, a break below that, we can see again the channel right there. Okay, it's back into the channel. So a break below that level, which is 0.5894, could see price touch upon 0.5869. If it goes further below that, 0.5852, again below that, 5828, okay, and then below that, we could see it test psychological level 0.5800. That's on the downside. Um, Initially, there were two support levels, 5941 and 5922, starting for today, Monday. But it's broken past that now because the trade deal with the US seems to have come into play with China, also with China. Hence, it's gone past two support levels already. Okay, and hitting the main support level right now, trying looking like it's going to break past it. But let's see what then unfolds, especially tomorrow with the inflation data, which is looking like it might perhaps push the pair back up a bit. Okay, so be on the lookout for that. On the flip side, if price happens to break beyond 0.5974, which seems to be a key resistance point, we expect price to touch upon 5986. Okay, and perhaps play around the psychological level of 0.600. Okay, if it goes above this, then price could perhaps touch upon 0.6022. So expect massive volatility from this guy. However, the upside in the meantime seems quite unlikely, majorly because of what seems like a somewhat fair value gap right here. Price is looking as though it wants to recover this fair value gap. So my money is on a sell, major sell moves this week and next week for the NZD I'm bearish on the NZD. I said that 2 weeks ago it was going to go quite bearish, and it's done that right now, especially because of the trade deal. The impact of the trade deal is quite strong, hence the effect might overshadow the CPI data that would be released tomorrow. The CPI data might perhaps push it up a bit if it's poor data coming from the US, which is a bit expected. And then perhaps Wednesday or through Friday, we might see again more bearish moves as more information from the US trade deal with China comes into play. Okay. For the Aussie, for the AUD what do we have? Just like the Kiwi is moving nicely along a channel, an ascending channel on the daily chart. Okay. But unlike the Kiwi, again, this is the NZD. We see the fair value gap right there. It formed a double top. So if price breaks past 5894, I want to see it touch upon 5869. If it goes beyond 5869, I want to see it touch upon 5852. If it goes below that, my target level will be 5828. And below that, 5800. That's for the Kiwi USD based on the double top data right here. And the US-China trade deal that happened today, that may overshadow again the inflation data released tomorrow. The inflation data, if it's poor for the US, might put the NZD USD a bit bullish. Okay, but if it's strong for the US, it might also further reinforce the news, reinforce what we're seeing right now, and push the pair a bit further down. So be on the lookout for that. Next, the AUD USD. We see it move nicely along an ascending channel, but unlike the Kiwi, it's still within the channel, still moving within the channel. Hence, it's looking like it wants to recover a somewhat fair value gap right here. Okay, okay, that coincides with the space within the channel. Hence, if you check the RSI, you see some slight negative divergence. Okay, for the LZ. And on the 4-hour chart, there are some key support levels. Now, if price breaks below 6386, I want to see it touch upon 6369. If it breaks past 6369, which is a key support level, the next target level might be 6354. If it goes below that, perhaps 6334, below that, 6321. If it goes below that 6311 and below that 6300 psychological level, and perhaps maybe 6285 if it goes below that. Now that level also coincides somewhat with um, the 38.2% mark on the Fibonacci. Okay, as you can see right there, 38.2% region on the Fibonacci. So um, be on the lookout for that. On the flip side, if we get maybe, Trump, you don't know what to expect. One day there's a deal, perhaps tomorrow there's no deal again. Nobody knows what to expect from Trump. So if some escalations again happens, which is not unlikely, it could boost this guy to the bullish side, strongly to the bullish side. And if it goes past 6441, we could see price touch upon 6468. If it goes above that, 6486, and perhaps 6500, above that, 6514. Uh, Conditions that might push it strongly bullish in this case, apart from the trade deal, could include also very, 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 very poor CPI data. The CPI data is massively poor for the US. It could do that, maybe touch upon it, then head back down because the bearish pressure on this guy is quite strong. Okay, considering the trade deal. Hence, again, the trade deal might overshadow the effect of the CPI tomorrow going into the course of the week. We don't know. Let's be on the lookout. Okay, pay attention to this key support and resistance levels. Now, the USD Swiss is showing something very interesting and has been doing so for the past 1 week. So this guy um, from the bearish flag. You can see if you follow the red lines there, indicating that it perhaps wants to continue its bearish break, bearish continuation. But again, I talked about the possibilities of a US-China trade deal on the Telegram channel. And I said that if that happens, it's going to push it massively bullish. Okay. So right now, it has touched upon the resistance border of of the bearish flag, which on the lower time frame looks like an ascending channel. Um, as you can see right there, looks like an ascending channel. Okay. It's touched upon the resistance border. Now, for me, my key resistance level will be the psychological level of 8450. If price continues way beyond that, especially on this US China trade deal right now, if it overshadows the CPI data from the US to be released tomorrow and keeps breaking past above it, or breaks above that level, we could see price touch upon the next psychological level of 8500. Okay, if it goes above that, we could see it go as high as 8550. Above that, it's 8550 here. Yeah, above that, perhaps 8575, and above that, 8600 psychological level. Okay, and above that, 0.8625. So this is the bullish scenario for me on the USD Swiss. But again, we don't know what to expect from Trump. If escalations happens again, he makes some comments that indicate that the US China have cancelled the deal, whatever. It's not ready to go into deal again with China. With China, it throws tantrums a lot. We could see it go massively bearish based on the weakness of the US dollar. Okay, or if the CPI data is extremely poor for the US, that could also push it to perhaps lower support levels. So if it breaks below the psychological level of 0.8400 on the downside, my next target level will be 8364, below that 8340, below that 8313, and perhaps 8286. I'm very skeptical about as to whether price could go below the bearish flag at this point. Maybe if comments from the Swiss National Bank come into play that they are willing to do anything, like they said initially, they're willing to do anything to defend the Swiss, um, that can make this guy to go strongly bearish. So be on the lookout for that. Play safe because the Swiss National Bank has indicated that they will do anything to defend the Swiss. Okay. So while the US is appreciating now against the Swiss, expect maybe some little interventions from the bank. So if you want to place positions on this guy, don't stay too long and don't take too much risk on your lot sizes. So this is USD Swiss. Um, to round it up, let's look at Bitcoin. The beautiful Bitcoin is moving nicely along what looks like a rising wedge, right? It's moving nicely along what looks like a rising wedge. But in some ways, if you look at it from another angle, it looks also look like an ascending channel. But I go with the rising wedge right here because there seems to be a somewhat fair value gap. Okay, there seems to be a somewhat fair value gap right here. That price is looking to recover. Okay, up to here. All right. So because of that, I favor a rising wedge. All right, and it looks like it wants to perhaps head down a bit before a continuation to the upside. We don't know, but I'm hopeful for a bearish continuation or a bearish drop. Okay, if this happens, there'll be some good money to capture. Then we also see negative divergence on the RSI, indicating that a bearish correction is imminent. Okay, be on the lookout for that. And then key support levels for me are 103.252 on Vestrados platform, 103.252. If price breaks below that, it might touch upon 102.674. If it goes below that, we might see it touch 102.266. Below that, 101.122, and below that, $100,000 mark. Okay. If price breaks past that, on the flip side, if it goes above key resistance level of 105.139 on Vestrados platform, it might touch upon 106.228. If it goes above that, 107.734, and above that, 109.596. This is Bitcoin. And that's that for our weekly outlook this week. Thanks for joining. I'll see you again next week. Have a great week and a beautiful trading week ahead.